Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all dignitaries, respected faculty members, and dear participants joining us today here. I'm very happy to share that yesterday's session was truly engaging, full of valuable discussions, fresh ideas, and your wonderful participation. So, thank you all for making it such an insightful and interactive experience. As we begin a new day of learning, let's bring the same enthusiasm, curiosity, and positive energy to today's session as well. So, without keeping you waiting, let's get started and continue our journey of knowledge, growth, and inspiration together with Dr. Shankar, Sidharth Shankar sir. So, we are truly honored to welcome Dr. Sidharth Shankar sir, and it is my honor to welcome him, a distinguished academic leader and a visionary educator. Dr. Sidharth Shankar sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi Technical University, Technological and Medical Science University, and Arunachal Pradesh. And also, he is holding additional charge of International University, Nagaland. Dr. Shankar brings over 23 years of rich experience across academic, research, and industry. A PhD in management and MBA by qualification. His expertise spans leadership, sustainability, CSR, and digital transformation. Under his dynamic leadership, the university has been remarkable growth in academics, research, and global collaborations. He has guided doctoral scholars, published extensively in reputed journals, and contributed to the national policy research. Recipients of several prestigious awards, Dr. Shankar is known for his vision, innovation, and inspiring mentorship. We are truly privileged to have him with us today as our chief guest for his faculty development program. So please join me in extending a warm and respectful welcome to Dr. Sidharth Shankar sir. Sir, we eagerly look forward to your inspiring address, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. Okay, so it's quite a pleasure to be here and talk to everyone in this session. I hope I'll be able to add value to the repertoire of knowledge that everyone present in the session already possesses. So with that hope, let me start the show. Okay, or let me start the session. Okay, so first of all, if you notice, I have made minor changes in the topic. Okay, in the topic that you had sent to me, if I am not wrong, the topic was transitioning to a green economy policy. Then you had mentioned after dash finance and innovation, right? So, and if you see in my case, I have done some changes transitioning to a green economy policy, finance and innovation. I may be wrong, but if that is the case, then both of us are on the same line. But let's see, first of all, when we start this topic, okay, let's look into how this concept was born. Okay, why was the need for, or why is green economy needed or different, or where are the antecedents? Those kinds of questions need to be asked. If you go into the topic, someone will tell you that it has got something to do with the current disbalance in global ecology and hyperconsumerism, and if all these things started with 1970s or 80s. That was the time when ozone hole was discovered, and all the imbalances in ecology began to be noticed by the scientists. So this is what we usually hear, but I have a little contrarian take. What is we have to go into the antecedents of the modern economy. Okay, so modern economy rose from the stomach, or from the ashes of the old economy. And what was the point where modern economy separated from the old economy? That was around the time of what in history is known as the Western Renaissance. So in Western Renaissance, there was something very, very important which led to the current stage of economic development that the whole world is witnessing. In the East, particularly so in India, the existence was considered as a united spectrum. Every form of life had a right to exist on that spectrum. Nobody was conqueror, nobody was vanquished, everyone was equal. Whereas in the Western Enlightenment project that started with the Renaissance, somewhere around 14th and 15th century, man was perceived as the conqueror, and nature was perceived as the frontier that needed to be conquered. That is why you find that in English language you get words like resource exploitation, you get words like mineral extraction. Okay, so if you look at those words from the point of view of psycholinguistics, they tell you about the mindset of the people who are using those words. Resource extraction, resource exploitation, something needs to be exploited, something needs to be conquered. The conqueror of Mount Everest, or the conqueror of South Pole or North Pole, right? These things have roots in Western Enlightenment project, which further go all the way back to the Abrahamic religions, because in Abrahamic religions there is a duality between man and nature, okay, between mind and body. In Indian tradition there is unity. Body is basically a reflection of mind, nature is basically a reflection of the soul, of the mind. In Indian tradition, that is why in Indian tradition there was never any emphasis to destroy the nature to achieve economic growth. Great economists like Schumpeter and others, when they were studying this phenomenon, they had predicted that the economic model that the West is following is not sustainable. Okay, it was calculated all the way in early 20th century and maybe even late 19th century that the economic model that the West had started to follow was based upon the idea of consumption forever, growth forever. If you look at any system from a systems point of view, then you would find that there is an upper limit to how far you can grow. There is upper limit to how far you can go. Consider it as an analogy of a ball, a sphere. We exist either on the sphere or inside the sphere. Whether it doesn't matter what is your point of view, whether you are existing on the sphere or inside the sphere. The space to expand is limited. Okay. So when you try to expand in an unlimited manner in a space that is limited, then there is contradiction all the time. Okay. And the roots of the modern economy can be traced back to that contradiction. When you seek growth at all costs and growth forever, then these kinds of things are bound to happen. People had predicted this. That is why in economics you have something like the Buddhist economics, or now people are calling it the Sanatana economics, all these things. Government of India is trying to promote the concept of Indian knowledge system, right? I don't know how many people who claim to be the champions of Indian knowledge system are actually talking about Buddhist economics, or the Sanatani view of economy, how the economy is supposed to run. In the Western system, that is the present day economy that we have throughout the world, rest of the world is basically aping the West. It has become a race all the way to the bottom. Nobody wants to stop, because if you have your eyes and ears focused on the AI debate, then that's a very nice analogy that is there. That where is the AI development headed? Everyone says that we are headed towards a state of artificial general intelligence, followed by artificial super intelligence. And artificial general intelligence would have something called as the agentic mode of development. What is the agentic mode of development? agentic mode of development would be an AI paradigm where AI would be in a position to create agents for specific tasks who would perform as good as any human being. Artificial superintelligence would be a situation where artificial intelligence would be better than all human beings combined, because no human being can be the best in the world in everything. ASI would be the best in everything. So people are saying now that this is not good for human society, because the proponents of ASI are saying that no, it is good for human society. What would happen? Everyone would become owner of a robot, humanoid robot who would work, and you can simply gain money out of the labor of the robots. It's like deploying trucks or cars in taxi fleet. But there's a very significant difference. The difference is we work not just because we want to make money. We work because work is a very integral part of our identity. If you take away the element of work from people, there's an identity crisis that everyone develops. That is why you must have noticed that when we meet some people or someone new, after some time, one usually tends to ask the question, what do you do? Right? That's not, otherwise, that's not a very important question. But invariably, no matter which culture we are talking about, people ask this question, what do you do? Because labor, profession is a very important part of human existence, human identity. If you withdraw this from human beings, then there's a psychological problem that we have to contend with. So now the question is, when AI is so dangerous, why aren't people stopping it? So the answer that is currently being said is that if I stop, what is the guarantee that China is going to stop or Russia is going to stop? And China and Russia say the same thing about the West. So in effect, it has become a race all the way to the bottom. Okay, and nobody wants to stop because they fear that the other person will reach the bottom before them. It is exactly the case as we witnessed during the Cold War, when people were building nuclear weapons and ICBMs mindlessly. So that mindset is transposed into economy also, where human beings are subservient to the economic order, right? So in the Western system, we exist to serve the economy. In the Indian system, economy exists to serve the human beings. There's a very big difference between the two conceptions. That is why you have the concept of santosh in India, that if you make whatever you make, be happy with that, right? Whereas in the Western system, you must have heard about this expression that you must have hunger in your belly to go far, right? So while it is true that you need to have hunger in your belly to go far, to achieve great things, but if you build a psychology around that idea, then you become predator. You start predating on the nature. You start predating on everything that exists around you. You know, in Christian mythology, it is said that nature exists for man to consume. In many ways, equivalents of that idea exist in Indian tradition also. In Indian tradition also, people say Veer Bhogyam Vasundhara, right? But that's a very minor part of our tradition. That's not the major part of our tradition, right? Whereas in the West, it is the major part of their tradition. Everything else has kind of been already sidelined to the relative insignificance. So, when this economic model started to be pursued by the West, it first of all resulted in the form of industrial revolution. If you read the history of industrial revolution, especially in places like England, where industrial revolution happened for the first time, and subsequently in Germany, where the most intense form of industrial revolution was witnessed before the rise of United States, and later before the rise of Asian economies like Japan and China. Okay, so if you visit these places, if you visit the history of UK and Germany, you would find that there are references that rivers had become black because of industrial soot that was being bellowed out by the chimneys of factories all the time. The average age of anyone working in the factories was something like 35 to 40 years old, because so much of smoke and heat and pollutant exposure was given to all the workers, that invariably they used to die very young. What was happening, that human life was also something that was viewed as a resource to be consumed. That is why you have another word called human resource. Right, so human life is also a resource in this economic model. Although in Hindi also you must have heard the word manav sansadhan, but that's a literal translation of the word that exists in English. This concept is alien to India. Human beings are not viewed as resources. Human beings are viewed as divine beings. Rather, all living beings are viewed as divine. You know, we never hear the word, like animal husbandry, right? Animal husbandry does tell you something, that you have to look into the history of the word husband. What is the meaning of the word husband in a contextual sense? There also it is the same thing. In their conception, wife and children were resources for husband to husband, to master, to use for their purpose. Okay, so it's a very predatory idea, which when started to be put into practice, to be operationalized, then the first result was the large scale destruction of the environment. In Germany, you have the word called black forest. So if you go to black forest, you would find that there's hardly any forest. Those are basically nicely planted trees in rows. As you would know, forests do not have trees growing in rows. Straight lines or geometrical patterns, clear geometrical patterns, do not exist in nature. They exist in human mind. And we as human beings, hello, was that something for me?
No, sir, just continue. I think someone is entering with her mic. Please continue.
Okay. So, as human beings, what happened, that slowly and slowly we started to get consumed. Now, somewhere around 17th and 18th century, because of this very economic model, the West developed sufficient economic and military might to colonize the rest of the world. Now, what happened, that the rest of the world had took the wrong lessons. Perhaps they did not have a choice. They learned that unless you industrialize, you would not be in a position to challenge the West. Okay, so they also started following the same economic model. Now there is a problem. The problem is that England is a country of 6 crore people. India and China are countries of close to 150 crore people. So if the same economic model that was followed by England or Japan or France or Germany or Netherlands or Spain or Portugal, or all the traditional economic powers from Europe, then you would find that the resource hungriness of these economies would be so large that the whole earth would start struggling to meet the resource needs of mega economies like India and China. India is not yet at the moment, India is only around 25% of China's economy. Okay, and China is only around 60% of US economy, right? In overall size, in per capita terms, China is close to say around 12,000 US dollars or 15,000 US dollars, whereas United States is close to 90,000 US dollars. So 6 times. Now the question is, if you want to earn 6 times more, what do you have to do? There are two things that you have to do. First, you have to produce more, then you have to produce more expensive things, because it is not a solution for you to produce more, just produce more. Then that way it is not a sustainable solution in under the present model, because somebody else who is poorer than you can always produce things at a cheaper rate than you, all things being equal, ceteris paribus. So what are the all other things? That is, um, electricity cost, transportation cost, and R&D cost, all those things being the same, then a poorer country would always be in a position to produce things at a cheaper rate than a higher country. That is the logic of the labor arbitrage on which the current economic model is based. So what happened, that when these at that point of time minions, but now large economies like India, China, in course of time, where this Indonesia, then maybe later on Nigeria, Ghana, these are countries that are reasonably large, or in the Middle East, Egypt. So these are large countries with large population bases. If ever they manage to, if the other countries they manage to pull up their socks to be even as much productive as India is, forget about Japan and Korea. So if they become even as much productive as India, or maybe Malaysia is higher, let's say India. So I hope everyone here understands the concept of capital output ratio. Okay, so in economics, there is a concept of capital output ratio, and people call it marginal capital output ratio. What it means that, how many units of capital you need to produce 1 unit of output. That is, how many dollars do you need to produce $1 extra unit worth of produce output. So that tells you the efficiency of an economy. It's a very nice concept. So in economies like Korea, which are hyper efficient, this ratio is close to somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5, or 1.5 to 2. So maybe for some countries it will be 2.5 also, which means if they invest $2 to $2.5, they manage to produce $1 additional worth of output. Whereas in India's case, till a few years ago, it was somewhere between 4 and 5. So, which means to produce the same unit of output, we needed much greater units of input. Now, when such inefficient economies, and India is still very much efficient compared to other developing and backward economies like Nigeria, Sudan, Egypt, Pakistan, Bangladesh. These are large population countries with very low efficiency levels. So when these countries also start producing, then there will be crisis. As it is, you can see that the rest of the whole world is crying over something called as rare earth elements, right? I am sure everyone here knows that there is nothing rare about those rare earth elements. Those rare earth elements are found almost in every country in the world. What is difficult to do is to extract them, and what is even more difficult is to process them, because they are very, very polluting industries. To extract 1 kilo worth of rare earth, you would have to pollute your atmosphere to an extent that would be equivalent to producing 100 kilos or maybe 500 kilos worth of steel. So there is so much of difference. So, but when economies like China, when they stop caring about these consequences, then what happens? That they accumulate the heft to blackmail the rest of the society, of humanity. Now you can see that China is doing to the rest of the world what the West was doing to the rest of the world till about a few years ago. At the moment, West does not have control over the resource part of the equation as much as the finance part of it, of the equation, or to some extent the technology part of the equation. But China has control over the resource part of the equation. It is the same thing as when India wanted to build cryogenic engines, then Western countries were not ready to give cryogenic fuel to India. That was both resource and technology. Even today, you must have read that Western countries are not willing to give jet engines to India, right? They are not willing to give supercomputing technology to India, quantum computing technology to India. Whereas those are efficiency enhancing measures. When India becomes efficient, when India becomes more productive, then India will pollute the world far less in order to extract the same level of output than it would otherwise have to do if India does not get access to efficient technologies. So giving efficient and productive technologies to countries like India is in the interest of Western countries, but they're not doing that because their mind is conditioned by that, again, victor and vanquished logic, which we saw through the concepts of psycholinguistics. So now, when this mindless race started progressing and picking up momentum, there's something called as exponential growth. What is exponential growth? Exponential growth is a model where every unit of growth over a period of time is higher than the unit of growth which was witnessed in the past, or maybe at the equivalent period in the past. Which means if you are growing at 4% this year, you have to grow at 5% next year, then 6.5% thereafter, then maybe 8.5% some other time, something like that. Which means you not only have to grow, but you have to grow at an ever increasing pace. So when this thing started happening, then this realization dawned upon the Western countries that this is a race which they cannot win. Okay. Moreover, around 20, 30 years ago, when China joined in 2001, when China joined the World Trade Organization, at that point of time, Chinese economy was maybe a little lesser than the size of Indian economy today. Okay. India in 2000 was maybe 60, 70 or 80% the size of Chinese economy. Okay. But what happened that everyone started predicting that when large countries like China, when they start throwing their endless human and natural resource in a bid to increase the economic output of their countries, then they would invariably outproduce West. That is when this is another side of the equation. One side of the logic or debate says that the entire debate on green economy or green policies was started out of concern for the earth. The other side says that no, that entire green economy debate started because the West did not want the developing countries, specifically China and India, to embark full steam on a path that would ultimately lead them to higher economic and military might compared to the rest of the world, more specifically the West. It's a very scary situation. At the moment, the West is finding it very, very difficult to deal with just one China. Imagine a situation where there are two Chinas. Ultimately, 10, 15 years down the line, there would be two Chinas. with for the Western world to contend with, and that's a very scary concept for them, which is why they want to they want to do everything that would prevent India and China from pursuing the same kind of economic policies. So these are two parallel arguments that are there about the kind of economic policies that need to be followed, the kind of economic policies which we would call green economic policies. Okay. So one says, one ascribes a certain kind of motive to the debate, other ascribes a very different kind of motive to the debate. As academicians, it is very, very important for us to know what are the different streams of thought in this debate. Okay, there are no black and white answers here. Nothing is absolutely true, nothing is absolutely false. Every answer is partly true, partly false. Okay, as Indians, we may feel that a certain direction that we are taking is, God's gift to us. It is the absolute truth, but that's not always the case. You know, for example, you see, at the moment in India, we are seeing a clamor for river interlinking project. Right? I'm not saying whether it is good or bad. For a moment, forget about that. Whether it is good or bad for the economy, for the ecology. Let's say that it is a project, river interlinking project. So has anyone ever tried to understand what would happen when the northern rivers are linked to the peninsular rivers? Most of the rivers in peninsula, that is in southern India, are not fed by glaciers, right? They are seasonal rivers. So the argument is that if you connect them to the northern rivers, which are fed by glaciers and which have perennial flow of water, and which also suffer from the problem of too much of water in rainy seasons. So when these two river systems are linked, then you would be in a position to transfer surplus water to regions that are deficient. So theoretically, it's a good argument. But have we tried to figure out what would happen to the ecology? After all, there must have been some reason why nature did not seek to do that. I am sure you are aware about the simulation logic, the debate which says that the entire universe is a simulation. So if that is the case, then we have to assume that nature also is an intelligent entity which allocates resources based upon the notion of the most efficient utilization of resources. Everything in nature points in that direction, right? Why is it that elephants do not have wings to fly? Why is it that large species of fish like whale, they're not found on earth? So these are questions which very controversial, no doubt. As I said, there is no such thing as universal answer, universally correct answer. But if you delve deep into those things, then you would come across this idea that before playing with nature, we must model. We must do modeling to find out what would be the impact. There was a time when dams were considered as the essential part of development. They continue to be considered that way even today. But are we aware, how many of us are aware, that in course of time, when dams start aging, then the ratio of power produced by them and that is the ratio between the power produced by them versus the power required by them to keep functioning, this ratio keeps on decreasing over time because of a phenomenon called silting. So in order to remove silting, then what do we have to do? Either we have to do desilting, but that's not possible because you cannot stop the flow of a river. You can do desilting only by creating another dam and then rechanneling the river in that direction, then do desilting in that direction, and wait for that dam to become silted, and then redirect the river in this direction. Which means to create one dam, we need to create two dams to solve the problem of silting, right? So that is the reason why so many dams are being decommissioned in the Western world. But there's no straightforward answer. If we start going against the concept of dams, then what would happen to agricultural productivity? Because the modern world is not a world of 4 crore or 5 crore human beings like the ancient world. This is a world where we have to produce enough food to feed 800 crores people very soon, right? In another maybe 50, 60 years, world would be home to 800 crore people. So we have to keep on producing food that is large enough to take care of the nutritional requirements of that large volume of body of population. So that's a very, very scary and large task that has to be kept in mind while thinking about agricultural policies. Modern agriculturists, on the other, unfortunately, have not been able to come up with alternatives to so-called model of agriculture that we have. What is the foundation of modern agriculture? Large utilization of water and large utilization of fertilizers and pesticides, right? So this is the foundation of modern agriculture. What is the effect? First of all, the rivers are being misutilized. They are being dammed. Because of damming, so many varieties of fish like gangetic dolphin or hilsa fish. Hilsa is a fish that is enjoyed by the Bengali people. It is also called ilis. That fish, it is on the verge of becoming extinct. So many varieties, even salmon, right? So many varieties of fish are finding it very, very difficult to survive because the path that connected their place of birth to the ocean has now been blocked by a dam. And the fish were never designed by nature to traverse through dams, right? People have tried simulating the ocean environment in dams, but that has not worked. So we are losing so many species currently. It's rather scary. If you look into the debate of ecology, you would find that every successive year is a year in which even greater number of species are touching a point where they are considered to be in danger of becoming extinct. It is called endangered species, right? We have somehow managed to bring the tiger back from the dead, so to say. But you must have heard about the concept of the Tasmanian tiger or the Indian cheetah. Okay, so all those animal species, they became extinct right before our eyes. Who knows what will happen? So because that is happening, then because of excessive utilization of fertilizer, what is happening to land? Go to Punjab. So the land of Punjab has been practically rendered barren if water supply is not assured through canal system. So the land of Punjab is now as worthless as the land of maybe a little slightly better than Rajasthan, the desert belt of Rajasthan. But that has become so heavily polluted because of over uses of agricultural chemicals that every year the farmers in Punjab have to spend more on fertilizer, pesticides, and water, which is which is also reflected in the form of electricity cost. That is why you find this thing that every year the problem of farmers indebtedness is growing in every state. It doesn't matter which state you are talking about. All those states which are pursuing so-called modern farming, they are facing this problem. All those states that are lower down in that race, that is states that have not yet fully embraced that model of farming, their indebtedness of farmers is not severe, but that gives no, that is not something for which those states need to be given credit. It is like, you know, being in an environmentally healthy position because you are a beggar, right? So that's not a good thing. But nonetheless, we have a situation where states like Bihar or Assam or maybe Madhya Pradesh, to some extent, Madhya Pradesh. So, states where intensive modern agriculture is not being practiced on a large scale, in such states, the farmer debt, and consequently farmer suicide is also less of a problem. But as and when the states progress on that in that direction, the same problem will be encountered there also. Degradation of land will be encountered there also. Fortunately, awareness is now building in society to prevent that, but how successful we will be, I don't know, because awareness about the ozone hole started building somewhere around 1980s, but we have not been able to prevent the formation of ozone hole, even though we are very very aware about that. People said that, if we do away with chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, then ozone hole problem will be solved, but nothing like that happened. The modern refrigerators are free of CFCs, but it doesn't matter. The ozone hole exists, something for which the nature took four and no, 3.5 billion years to create. How can you repair that in 20 years or 30 years? That's very very difficult. Hopefully, with the advent of modern quantum computing, where we are seeing that problems that are supposedly that would otherwise have required some septillion years for classical computers to solve, are being solved in 18 hours or 20 hours. So maybe those computers would be in a position to do much better environmental modeling and simulation. If that happens, fine. Otherwise, I don't know, what the condition of the planet be. So when this thing started happening, then what happened that under the leadership of United States and more specifically Europe also, the whole world was convened into something called as the Climate Accord, which ultimately resulted in the Paris Conference. It is called Conference of Parties, where the whole world committed to three ideas, right? Equitable access to finance, equitable access to resources, and maybe equitable policies or something like that. Three policy goals were universally adopted by all the countries, and every country adopted a target for itself. But that is, when would they become carbon neutral? So India said that by 2070 we would become carbon neutral. I hope everyone understands what carbon neutral is, right? So India said that we would become carbon neutral, but before becoming carbon neutral, we would become the largest polluter in the world, right? If we continue to follow the Western economic model, because we need more and more power. If we need more and more power, we would burn more and more of coal and of other fossil fuels. Maybe now people are saying nuclear energy. I don't know what the final consequences of too heavy a reliance on nuclear energy would be. I have no idea. Nobody has ever tried to answer this question to the satisfaction of everyone. Let's hope that they're right. But at the moment, nuclear energy is not even 2% of or 3% of our overall energy basket, energy mix. Okay, so solar is being geared in a big direction, big way. Solar is being promoted in a big way, but there's a problem with solar. That's also a technological problem, that you can produce electricity from solar power only during the hours. During the night hours, what do? Right? You have to depend upon the old methods of energy production. So the best solution that we have come up with to combat the climate change is solar power, which at best is effective only for maybe some 6-7 hours in a day. And that also during the rainy season, it is not effective at all. So this over reliance on technology is not a panacea that can solve all the problems. Ultimately, human beings and human society has to decide how much is enough. Do we need it? It's a very philosophical question. Ultimately, when society moves in that direction, then we have to think that what is the point of owning 5 Bentley cars, right? Or what is the point of owning 5 apartments in Bombay, right? Or why do we need to go to Switzerland to have vacation? Why can't we go to Khandala or Lokhandwala or somewhere in India nearer, so that the damage to the environment is low? At the moment, most of us are not going to Switzerland because we cannot afford to go to Switzerland. If the economic deterrence is removed, then all of us would run to Switzerland or to somewhere in South America to experience holidays. So, our supposedly or so called environment friendliness is perhaps more a result of relative poverty than of our absolute commitment to the idea of environment friendliness. So at some level, it also tells you about the uh, double standards that exist throughout the world. Anyway, so when these things started, when the whole world adopted the climate change concept, and they imposed upon them certain targets after the Paris Accord, then maybe 5-10 years down the line, something else has happened, which is also very, very interesting. Now, if you notice the debate in Western societies, I would advise everyone to go and listen to the talks being given by former Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Liz Truss, or the current President of United States, Mr. Donald Trump. What are they saying? They are saying that we lost out to China because we made our energy very, very expensive, among other things. So what do they mean when they say that they have made their energy very, very expensive? They mean that previously we used to power ourselves through coal and petrol and diesel, which was relatively easy and inexpensive. Now we are trying to power our societies through, because remember one thing, Europe is not blessed with abundant sunshine. So in the name of sustainable sources of electricity, they have to depend upon something called as wind power or coastal power or tidal power, you know, things like that. And in United States, it is partly solar and partly all these things. But till about a few years ago, solar power was more expensive than any other form of power. It was the most expensive form of power in the power kitty of the world. Now India is saying that solar power is the cheapest. But it's like statistics. You are hiding more than you are revealing. Okay. So nobody is talking about the cost of disposing of the waste that is created through solar modules. Solar modules are ultimately like cell phones or electronic gadgets. They have to be disposed, and they are very, very toxic. Why? Because they are made of rare earth elements and other things, so that are environmentally not friendly. So when you build very large scale solar power plants, what would happen? Now people are coming and saying that, oh no, maybe in 20-30 years we'll have a situation where we will produce power in the outer space and transport that power to earth through superconductivity. But those are fantastical things. It's like saying that we will have a situation in the future where human beings will live for 10,000 years. Nobody will die. So if nobody dies, then it means that nobody will be born also. Because if you stop the phenomenon of death, and if you do not stop the phenomenon of of birth, then imagine what would happen to the global population. So would you like to live on an earth where everyone is living for 10,000 years and the population of earth is 10,000 billion? Right? We would certainly not want to live in that kind of society. Okay. What is this? Okay. So we have a situation like that. Now Western countries are increasingly saying that if they continue to follow the same path which they have imposed upon themselves, then ultimately they would be becoming poorer and poorer with every single day, and countries like China and India would manage to close the gap, which would not be good for them. That is why you find a situation of backlash against globalization. Okay, throughout the world, throughout the world, no matter which country you are in the Western world. Okay, in India, there's a backlash in a different way, but not to the same level as it is there in United States or Europe. People are saying that Europe and United States have effectively been deindustrialized because of globalization. And the one of the underlying principle objectives of globalization was sustainability, so called. So they are now blaming sustainability indirectly by blaming globalization. However, I wanted to make everyone aware about this current debate. Now, we need to understand some of the instruments that were developed to help the whole world move towards a green economy. One of the most important debates that took place in this direction was that green economy or green technology is inherently more expensive than traditional economy or traditional technology. It happens all the time. If you have to cook food by burning wood, which you collect from the forest, then technically speaking, in layman's terms, there is no cost that you are incurring. You simply go to the forest, collect the wood, and cook. Whereas if you are cooking on LPG cylinders, then there's a cost, direct cost. It does not mean that there is no cost when you are cooking through wood, but that cost is very, very difficult to calculate if one is talking from the point of view of an ordinary consumer. Similarly, in economy also at an aggregated level, the traditional things are relatively cheaper, but green economy has an upfront cost, okay, which you need to incur for you to be able to achieve a situation of lower per unit cost in future. Now, who will pay for the installation of green technologies? This was debated during Paris Climate Accord. And the Western world said that they would be contributing something like $300 billion or $400 billion to the developing world every year as part of their commitment for the rest of the world to move to a green economy. However, what happened that after 2007 or 8, when the whole world for the first time saw the Western world in a big economic mess, what happened that every single Western country, it started reducing the amount that it was committing towards that fund. Now we have a situation where hardly anyone is committing anything. Now they are saying that countries like India and China, they are not developing economies, so they don't need any support. Okay, when their GDP is as big as ours, then UK is saying this. I'm sure you must have heard about this. That when India sent its probe to the moon, then a media commentator in the UK said that if India can send its probe to the moon, why do we need to send development aid to India? Right? It is not needed. It was a very stupid argument, but an argument nonetheless. And we need to understand that it is being born out of a genuine sense of frustration in the Western countries. So that particular thing, that how to finance movement towards green economy, it existed at the global level as well as at the local level. in every country, we saw things like green bonds, green banking, green debt, green index, all these things. So, what are those financial instruments? What is green bond? Green bond is nothing else but a financial debt issued either by a country or by a corporation with the stated objective of using that money only to for the purposes related to green technology or green. Otherwise, there is nothing green about them. Okay, you may be raising money to build say solar power, large solar power plants in a forest by cutting down a forest. So technically it will be called green bond, even though it would be anything but green. However, that is the name of the instrument. Green banking, you know what is green banking? So in layman's term, green banking is one where there are two things are followed. Larger and larger share of banks kitty is deployed towards financing of green economy and green technologies, and the bank is leaving lesser and lesser footprints on the economy. What are the reflections? That when you go and withdraw money from the ATM, the ATM will not give you a slip. It will send you an electronic receipt. Uh, Whereas someone needs to ask the question that the power that was consumed to generate the electronic receipt, was that not produced by destroying the ecology to whatever extent it did, right? So there's now we are people are talking about electric vehicles, right? But how many people are aware that batteries are one of the most polluting things that can be produced? Okay, batteries are one of the most polluting things. Besides, every day you are increasing consumption of electric power. Technically, you are technically what I mean in reality, you are reducing the consumption of fossil fuels, but you are increasing the consumption of electric power. So one form of pollution is going, but other form of pollution is coming. That is why there's no such thing as absolute green or such. Maybe in sometime in future, I'm reading these days that we are very close to a situation where we will have functional nuclear fusion technology, which will produce absolutely clean energy for everyone, cheapest possible form of energy without any danger of nuclear radiation. I hope people understand the difference between nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. If you don't, then I would advise that you go and study that, because these two things are very, very clearly related to the green debate. Nuclear fission is also one step in the direction of green economy, but it is an intermediate stage. Nuclear fusion is the ultimate stage. Nuclear fusion is the form of is the technology that is used by sun and the stars to produce energy. Okay, but abundant, cheap. So if we master nuclear fusion energy, we will not have to think about electricity production for ever. There is enough, 1 kg of hydrogen would be in a position to supply electric power to something like maybe 1 crore people, something like that. That is the scale of uh, efficiency that nuclear fusion technology will bring. But those are, items of future. In the meantime, we have to worry about things like rising energy costs because of data center. A few days ago, I heard an interview of Jeff Bezos. Hello. Okay, so a few days ago, I heard an interview by Jeff Bezos, where he was saying that we will very soon be building data centers either on the moon or in the low Earth orbit, where there is no electricity required to cool down the data centers, and sunlight is available throughout the year, 24 hours in a day, for you to draw power to run those data centers. And so this would be humanity's attempt to harness the potential of outer space. But one needs to ask a question: when you have to transport that big payload to the outer space, how many kilograms or tons or billions of fuel will have to be spent on rockets to achieve that goal? Will that not be polluting? Right? So everything that we do has an ecological consequence. That is the most important awareness that we have to keep in mind. Second thing is that human beings are inherently polluting. Wherever you have a human being or even life itself, when you are alive, and if you do, you are breathing, you are actually producing carbon dioxide, which is pollution. So life itself is polluting, but human beings are the worst form of pollution that life can give to the world, to the earth. So we have to be aware that we are inherently destructive towards the ecology, towards the earth. We have to find ways to, create, to achieve the best possible symphony between our existence and existence of the planet and ecology, right? So and in terms of policy, in terms of innovation, it is nothing else but various technologies that are needed for us to become one step closer to a truly green economy. As I said, there is no such thing as absolutely green. There is no such thing as final destination. Everything is a step in a certain direction. As countries, as societies, we have to adopt policies that help us reach that destination, right? I guess, I was given time till 7 o'clock or 7:30, so I can go on till 7:30. But do you want me to open the floor for question and answers, or do you want me to continue? Do let me know. Am I the only one?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
So
can I
what
share
is
again? Can I share again your PPT, sir, or it is okay to continue with the
yeah,
without
it's
PPT?
okay.
It is okay,
It's
na?
okay.
Yes, because it is
It's
okay.
okay,
Right.
more or less. We have covered all the points. So
Yes, yes,
if
yes,
we
yes.
want, I can deliberate on individual points a little more in order to help us sail to the 7:30 p.m. mark. But I guess that is not the objective. The objective is for everyone to utilize that time to ask questions that they have, right?
Correct, sir.
So tell me, what is it that you want me to do? Do you want me to continue, or would you prefer question and answers?
Dear all participants, please respond. You want a question answer session or sir want to continue?
Can you please come
Good
again,
evening, sir.
Rajesh sir? Yes.
Hello.
Yes, continue,
Hello.
madam.
Good evening,
Hello.
sir. So the
Yeah,
session can be
Annapurna, please.
continued, sir. Good evening, sir. The session can be continued, sir. It is very interesting. We
Okay.
don't want any interruption right now, sir.
Is that, a request for session to be continued because it is interesting, or is that an excuse not to ask a question? No, it is
It is
interesting.
interesting, sir. Definitely, I will ask you a question after the answer. Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
So see, now there's are some very interesting questions, further questions that need to be answered. I have already given some hint that who will be the ultimate beneficiary of the green debate, because one thing is for sure, I'm sure you know that there is no such thing as zero sum game in nature, right? Even if you are a vegetarian, when you eat, you destroy another form of life to satiate your hunger, to satisfy your hunger, right? So the same equation applies in economy also. At the moment, one part of the globe is dominant over other parts of the globe. That part is collectively called as the global west, although there's no such thing as global west because Japan is not part of the west, Korea is not part of the west. Okay, whereas Haiti is a part of the West, which is the poorest country in the world, a neighbor of United States. Okay, Venezuela is part of the Western hemisphere. In fact, large parts of Southern America are parts of Western hemisphere. So the West and the East are not geographical concepts. We must keep in mind that these are not geographical concepts. These are socio-economic concepts imposed on geography. So when we say global West, it means countries that have achieved a certain level of economic development, and so much so that the nature of problems and public debate is by and large the same in those countries. That is why you would find that things like, mental health or same-sex marriage, right, or environmental consciousness, these are very big things in Western countries. You have something called as Green Party in all the global North countries, right? So you must have recently heard the word global South and global North. So global North is nothing else but what was formerly called as the West, and global South is nothing else but a collection of all the developing countries. There's a problem. So if Nigeria is also South and China is also part of global South, how can they be the same? How can they be at the same level? China is part of South only because of the concept of average, right? Otherwise, in terms of technological prowess, in terms of absolute size of the economy that it has, it is second only to United States. But because of the concept of average, which in economics is called as per capita income, okay, so because of the concept of averages, we have a situation where China is part of the global South, okay, whereas many countries in Eastern Europe, okay, let's say Albania is a country where the per capita income is $8,000, right? Whereas per capita income of Thailand would be more than Albania, right? Or maybe some other country in Southeast Asia. Certainly, some of the countries in Middle East will have higher per capita income than Albania. But Albania is part of the West in many ways. I mean, Albania is a borderline case. It is not part of the West. But I hope you understand what I am coming at. Right. So question arises, who will be the beneficiary? Now, I'm sure all of you have heard that historical forces are secular by nature, right? Nobody knows, there is no such thing as a technology designed to favor a particular community. When computer science was born, did anyone in the West ever think that Indians would be the beneficiary of computer science? We would have millions of Indians becoming computer engineers and quote unquote steal the jobs from the West. Nobody thought like that. But this is the beauty of technology. In English, they say mysterious are the ways of the God. And in history, they say technology is the march of God on earth. So in that way, their nature is more or less the same. So technology, there is no such thing as inherent tendency in a technology to favor a community or to do harm to a community, right? So ultimately, it is the internal capacity of the community to master the workings of that technology that determines which community will be emerging as the beneficiary of a particular technology. So in case of green technologies also, we see that, what are the central elements of green technology? Central elements are like, new forms of power, new forms of computing, new forms of transportation, new forms of production inside the factory, okay, and new forms of communication. So let us start with the last. For a sustainable economy in the green sense, the technology that is going to play the most vital role on the factory floor is called the Internet of Things. Okay, so in Internet of Things, when it truly arrives, human beings would become practically useless on factory floor. We would have a situation where one machine would be placing an order on another machine for things that would be used by some other machine, right? So in an IoT kind of scenario, when your fridge realizes that there is the milk in your fridge is short on supply, then the fridge will place an order on maybe a big basket to deliver milk on you to your house, and before you know, there would be milk in your house, right? So while at some ways, at some places it is good, one doesn't really know what would be its final impact. It may or may not always be good. However, from the point of view of things, technologies that would be applied on factory floor, IoT would be very, very important. IoT would also have some other consequences or some other components. For example, 6G would be required, maybe 7G also would be required. Then, we would have software driven mode of communication. At the moment it is hardware driven mode of communication. I hope you know what is hardware driven and what is software driven. This is communication, whereas phone is example of a hardware driven mode of communication, right? So software driven mode of communication or software oriented solutions are less heavy on resources, whereas hardware oriented modes of solution are heavier on resources. So it needs to be kept in mind. So I mean, this would be from the point of view of green production. Let us say what is maybe green transportation, electric vehicle, hybrid vehicles, solar vehicles, maybe at some point of time, nuclear powered vehicles, maybe not nuclear powered car or bikes, but certainly if we can have nuclear powered, say, aircraft carrier, why can't we have nuclear powered ships? Or why can't we have nuclear powered aircrafts? Okay, so this debate will have to be taken into account. Why can't we have nuclear powered rockets? Imagine a situation where you don't have to burn billions of liters of fuel to lift a rocket from the earth. I hope you are aware that we need to burn something like 50 or 100 kilos of fuel simply to lift 1 kg from earth. Okay, the higher we go, the lesser is the fuel requirement. But imagine if we have a situation, that figure can be here and there, but it's enormous. Okay, so what if we don't have to burn any fuel to go to on the space? So green technology in transportation is very, very important. When we are talking about electric vehicles, then there are two forms of options that we have. Okay, one is battery powered mode of transportation. Other is a mode of transportation that would look similar to the electric trains. You would have a pantograph that would attach to either an overhead or an underneath power source, and the vehicle will draw power from there and then run, like small trains. I have seen such kind of things in action in Europe. So and recently even Mr. Nitin Gadkari was saying that he is going to build a highway that will connect Delhi to Jaipur, where trucks will use that technology, right? Where they will have a pantograph that will connect to the power lines, and the trucks will move using electricity instead of burning diesel. So that is about the green transportation. Okay. Then we will have green energy. As I already said, in green energy, different parts of the world will follow different trajectories till the point that we end up developing nuclear fusion. There is another thing that we have to keep in mind. that every technology that is developed, say a situation, if United States develops nuclear fusion, why would it give nuclear fusion free of cost to the rest of the world when it has invested, say, around $500 billion to develop that technology? Right? It will not give free of cost to any other country in the world. And if the rest of the world, especially the poorer countries, find that if they have to invest, say, 50,000 crore rupees to build a power plant, nuclear fusion power plant that would produce an output which equivalent of which can be had by building a coal powered power plant that needs only 5,000 crores. Right? So many countries may or may not be willing to invest their resources in that kind of power. We will have, this is perhaps very, very important. Green computing. Computer technology is going to play a critical role. At the moment, many of the things that we want to do, but are not in a position to do, are because we don't know how to do those things. Right? For example, if we want to increase the energy density of battery, at the moment, what do? We have to deploy thousands of scientists, and they will carry out experiments over thousands of maybe hours, all lasting, just a moment, all lasting for maybe decades, and then we will come to know the final output. Okay, so when we have the technology called quantum computing that's fully ready and available, in a position to solve many of the biggest of problems within a time frame which would be acceptable to everyone. So hopefully we will have a situation where we can move in that direction. Another technology that would be very, very important would be superconductivity. Right? I hope you know what is superconductivity. If you don't know, for the benefit of those who don't know, let me summarize. Superconductivity is a state where a conductor, let's say a metal, it becomes conductor to electricity at in a condition where it would otherwise not have been a conductor. For example, let's say that we cannot transport electricity over air. Right? It is not possible to transport electricity over air. Nature does it, but that looks like that, but it's not actually. When we see lightning, then many of us may think that nature is conducting electricity over air, but that's not the case. That electricity is being conducted over water molecules, charged water molecules that accumulate in the environment during rainy seasons. But superconductivity is a technology that tells us that anything which is not generally a conductor can be made a conductor if uh, uh, the temperature is made reasonably cold. In fact, you would be surprised to know that everything becomes a conductor. Almost everything becomes a conductor as and when we start reaching the absolute zero temperature. Absolute zero is 1 Kelvin. 1 Kelvin equals to minus 273 point something degrees centigrade. It does not exist in a reality, but that is the theoretical limit to which temperature can drop. Beyond that, temperature cannot drop, because if temperature drops beyond that, then volume becomes negative. So we cannot have a situation where anything will have a negative volume. Right? Then entire concept of physics will change. Right? In that thing, if you burn 1 kilo of fuel, you will produce 500 kilos of fuel. That's not possible. That's counterintuitive. There are certain rules of physics that we have to follow. It is called the energy conservation principle, so which says that a negative volume is not possible. But another application of superconductivity is that we can have non-magnetic elements behaving like magnets. Okay, in a very different way. For example, two a piece of train can glide over glass, not even say iron. At the moment, we must have heard about the concept of maglev trains, where trains glide on electromagnetic tracks. They don't run, they effectively fly on those tracks. But those are very interesting possibilities created by the technology that is called superconductivity. It has not yet been mastered. Another thing that must be kept in mind, right now we are talking about the technological aspect, that for us to be able to realize the full potential of quantum computing, we would need to master the technologies related to the cryogenic state. Quantum computer can work only when it is kept at very, very cold temperatures. The moment the temperature increases, there is something called as the interference. So when the particles that are doing computing, they start interfering with the functions of each other, as a result of which the results become uh, very, very problematic. And the designers of the computer or programmers of the computer of those kinds of computers would have to deploy ever more quantities of resources just to make sure that those computers perform in a flawless manner. So the entire objective becomes defeated. So this is about the technological part. Okay. Then there we would have a social part. Not everyone will be an equal beneficiary, right? What would happen that some people who are beneficiaries of the current model of economic development, for example, farmers who are using too much of water and too much of fertilizer to grow crops in a place like Punjab, if they are asked to grow to follow organic farming, then they may not like it, because I'm sure you are aware about what happened in Sri Lanka around 2-3 years ago. There was a massive crisis that happened in Sri Lanka, which resulted in the president of Sri Lanka being thrown out of that country. And one of the contributing factors was the decision of the then president of the country to uh, insist upon farmers that they should use organic farming. So when everyone started using organic farming, then agricultural production dropped by staggering 60 to 80%. And the price of agricultural commodities became so much that suddenly people found it very, very difficult even to have food. And when there is inflation either in agriculture or in energy, then this inflation is very easily transported into other sectors of the economy, and everything else becomes expensive. And as a result of which, what happened in Sri Lanka was, within a very short period of time, the whole country became hyperinflationary. Banks stopped issuing notes to their customers. There were huge queues outside the banks. All the supermarket stores ran out of food, ran out of everything. The country ran out of foreign exchange to place orders on its suppliers. So most of the orders in foreign trade, I am sure you are aware that the foreign trade runs on the basis of an financial instrument which is called the letter of credit. So letter of credit is created only when you have adequate credit in your bank. So when you have run out of foreign exchange, who would give you an LC to be used in a foreign exchange market, right? And even if they give, who will honor that LC? So that kind of situation is very much possible if we are not aware about the notion that technology may or may not benefit everyone equally. So we have to foresee which are the communities that are likely to be adversely affected, and then accordingly create systems and institutions that would cushion the blow for them. For example, right now we have a situation where government of India is giving ration to crores of people every year. Right? Why is government of India doing that? Because those people, quote unquote, although I don't buy that argument, but I'm quoting the argument given by the government that those people have fallen behind in the developmental race. Therefore, we need to take care of their basics so that they do not succumb to the temptations of crime or social evil. Those are the things that will need to be kept in mind. So it's a very, very complicated thing. Technology will feed into economy, economy will feed into politics, politics will feed into society, society will feed into ecology, and ecology in turn will feed into everything else. All these things taken together, they will start interacting with the cosmos. So one doesn't know what ultimately will happen. All that we can do is hope for the best and hope that God is kind enough and he will allow us to continue to exist on this earth. In addition to that, I have enormous faith in the power of science to solve problems, but I do not have boundless faith in the power of science to solve problem. As I said, that the problem of death cannot be overcome unless we are willing to forego the idea of birth, right? So there are a few problems that cannot be solved by science. So there's no point expecting science to solve those problems. I believe that when everyone starts taking that kind of holistic worldview about things, will we truly be in a position to think in a more meaningful manner about this entire debate of green economy, green policy, green technology, all those things. Okay, that's all from my side.
Thank you, Sidharth sir, for encouraging us with your words. And before the question answer in session, I would like to invite our principal sir. He also want to share something with you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Good evening, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Very,
Oh,
very nice, very informative and very innovative session, sir. Very interactive.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And
I
information
always
was
follow this
very,
policy. I always follow this policy.
information was so important and so right, and it is required to know everybody, every individual of the India.
Yes. So thank you so much.
So,
That has always
yeah,
been my
my,
approach.
yeah. Myself, Dr. Prakash Patil, in charge principal of Arunachal Pradesh, would like to welcome you at this FDP. Also, would like to welcome all the participants who are there. 160 participants are there. And our FDP is transitioning to green economy policy, finance and innovation. This is a very good topic, and it is a need of India as well as global sustainable development. So green economics aims to strategies which converge peaceful relationship between people and the natural world. That I feel so. So main motto of eco-innovation is to help mitigate excess emission and aid in the climate change crisis. There are various benefits of this topic, but 4 to 5 benefits are there important. One is sustainable growth. Second benefit is new job creations. Third is reduced environmental risks. Fourth is enhanced society equity through inclusive development and resource efficiency. And fifth is it promotes low carbon future by shifting to innovation, renewable energy, encourages innovation in clean technology and create the more resilient, high quality of life for every individual. These are some of the points I would like to put in front of all of you on behalf of this particular FDP. Also, I would like to suggest that is instead of having smart city development, we should go for smart village development. So that will affect a lot to develop a green economy, green manufacturing, green innovation, green technology, and in the villages itself. And we need to help the farmers to have high-tech farming, green farming, organic farming, so that definitely it will transform the life of every individual of India to the green world. That is my opinion. So once again, I thank you, sir, and also I thank all the participants who are consistently and daily they are attending this FDP and they are taking participation with interest and with right interaction. So I congratulate all the participants also. Also, I would like to congratulate our organizing team, coordination team, Dr. Shilpa ma'am, Dr. Ashwini ma'am, Mr. Professor Sabbani sir. We have taken a lot of efforts for making this FDP a grand success. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
And yes, so yes, dear participants, if you want to ask something, and this is a question answer session, so you can ask any questions, or you can share your thoughts also.
मैडम माय थॉट इज दैट जिस मोड से हमारा सेशन स्टार्ट हुआ था क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशंस वी गॉट द ऑल आंसर्स विद इन अ सेशन जो डिस्कशन सर ने आज हमारे साथ किया है इट फील्स लाइक दैट इट इज द वन टू वन discussion and that thought process is shared with us and how it needs to be that framework policies and all how it needs to be there with all the detailing is there with sir. तो जो भी स्टार्टिंग में क्वेश्चन आंसर्स थे उसके आंसर्स हमको थ्रू आउट द सेशन मिल गए तो पार्टिसिपेंट्स प्लीज बी इंटरैक्टिव ऐसे मौके बार बार नहीं मिलते टू आस्क द क्वेश्चंस विद बट प्लीज बी इंटरैक्टिव एंड गेट द थिंग्स डन थैंक यू सर थैंक यू वेरी मच
Yes, and Dr. Mehta, she raised hand. Dr. Mehta, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yes, good evening,
Good
ma'am.
evening, sir. Good evening. Very good evening, sir. Sir, as I have promised that I will definitely ask a question. I have few questions, but I will ask only one or two. Okay. Sir, like we are living in a developing country. Okay. India is actually all the countries are seeing India as a developing country, and they have seen that yes, India is good for the production and manufacturing unit. Therefore, we have invited FDI as well. So just because we have the cheap labor, we have the large number of population, working population, okay, and we have so much of graduates available here. But when we are talking about developing, then how it is very difficult to balance the industrialization with the environmental sustainability because of the industrialization we are saying that because of that licensing procedures इंडिया में थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम जाता है फॉर दी मतलब स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन लेने के लिए सो फॉर द सस्टेनेबिलिटी एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी थोड़ा मुझे लग रहा है कि प्रॉब्लम है तो उसके लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं
नहीं सी I mean licensing is not a pertinent issue here, but still, I mean, as I said in the very beginning, sustainability and modern economy, these two are contradictory things. You know, it's like ensuring the mutual coexistence between a lion and a goat, right? So if left one to one would certainly destroy the other, right? That is why you have to create a large enough mass of both so that by sheer weight of statistical possibility, at least one outcome is favorable to you. And when you are aware about statistics, when one thing becomes favorable and it starts replicating itself, that is how nature also operates, right? So when one thing becomes successful and it starts replicating, then beyond a point, critical mass gathers around that concept and the other things get defeated. As I said in the very beginning, that the entire hope is, or the entire argument is based on a hope. The hope is that we will have technology that will be in a position to solve all the problems, right? But all those pieces of technological solutions are not yet in place. So we don't know how it is going to pan out. Indications are that the technology will be ready by and large before a country like India becomes truly a threat to global ecology. At the moment, India at best is a threat to its own ecology, right? It is not a threat to global ecology because our per capita emissions are maybe 5% of the emissions that are witnessed in countries like United States or Europe. So there is not to worry at the moment, but things can change at any point of time if technology does not deliver what we are expecting it to deliver. So the entire game is based on two ideas. One is technology and other is the faith in human innovativeness. So that innovativeness sometimes reflects itself in the form of technological development. Sometimes it reflects itself in the form of procedural innovation. Even if technology remains the same, if you change the process, many a times things become more efficient, right? This is called, in management we call it process re-engineering. Okay, so I'm sure that all of you are aware about what is called process re-engineering. This is not a new thing, it has existed. Those who have had anything to do with software industry or BPO industry, they know what is uh, process re-engineering, because this concept was extensively deployed in those two industries. Now it is also being deployed in manufacturing industries, but the idea is more or less the same. So as I said in the very beginning, sustainability and economic development, these are two contradictory things. It's like the bread and butter equation. In economics, we read the production possibility curve, right? That at a certain level of technological development, if you produce one thing, if we have an economy which produces only two items, bread or guns, so the more you produce breads, the lesser you would be in a position to produce guns, and the more guns that you produce, the lesser would be the quantity of a butter that you would be in a position to produce. It is like that. It's a choice, one versus the other. One just hopes that because of technology, and it has always been the case, technology always pushes the production possibility curve, right? That in a given technological context, you may be able to produce only, say, 10 kg worth of output with 5 kg worth of input. But when technology improves, you may be in a position to produce 50 kg. You see, at the moment, the size of the earth is the same, but we are managing to feed close to a little over above 700 crores of people throughout the world. Whereas there was a time in human history, not too far back in time, when famines were the order of the day. We had a big famine uh, in Bengal, when Winston Churchill, when it was pointed out to him that people are dying in Bengal because of this famine, then Winston Churchill had remarked that why hasn't Gandhi died yet, if the famine is so real and so potent. So now we find famine-like situations in countries like Sudan, Somalia. Okay, but those are very rare. पहले हम सब ने सुना होगा कि यहाँ सूखा पड़ गया, अकाल पड़ गया, but now that's not the case. So it is because of technological development that the production possibility curve has shifted rightwards. Okay, so so the entire faith is based on technology and human ingenuity. Otherwise, there is no fixed answer. Nobody knows what will happen. Okay, anyone who says that they have all the answers, they are either gods or they are liars of highest order.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, one more thing, like for the environment, like we have come up with the new education policy. Okay, for we are making the syllabus according to that for SDG 17 goals. So I'm an assistant professor at MIT University, Chhattisgarh. So last time we had one subject FSSD, that is food security and sustainable development. This time we have gender equality. So it was easy for us as a student to understand the importance of environment, but it is quite difficult for us to pass on this information to the young generation. Means through education we are making it mandatory, but earlier it was not like that. So for that means how we can means encourage these students to treat environment equally important as their life.
See, what I am going to say is not politically correct. So bear with me if you are the supporter of one or the other political argument. I am an equal opportunity offender when it comes to political debate. I am equally disliked by all streams of political thought. Okay, so pardon me for that, but okay, the approach that has been adopted by the government, it is not a very syncretic approach. It looks more like a bureaucratic approach where the focus is on generating millions and trillions of reports. Okay, every faculty member is producing thousands and thousands of reports, but that's not the objective of education system. When you try to make a horse fly, then what happens? Beyond a point, the horse also stops running. So that is what is happening to the education system. The new education policy, it's a very in places it's a very lofty idea, in places it's too lofty to be realistic. Now, as you rightly said, you are teaching gender equality. You see, I seriously believe that there are a few things that should be kept out of the boundaries of formalized syllabus. Okay, the moment you put something in the boundaries of syllabus, then it becomes subject to the pressure part that you have to score marks, you have to get grades. So people start disliking those things. Whereas concepts like gender equality, considering how important they should be imparted in such a way that they are never disliked by the people whom it is being passed on to, namely the younger generation. Okay, what when we were children, we were taught about the importance of being obedient to the parents and to the teachers, to the extent that many of us started hating the word obedience, right? So this idea of gender equality or environment, it should not meet the same fate. That is why I am of the opinion that everything should not be done through educational institutional channels. Many times it is enough to push people in the right direction so that they explore things on their own and they become better at it over a period of time. Someone may be an extreme bigot, but he may get great marks in gender equality. Whereas when he grows up, gets married, then he would become the biggest wife beater, even though he may have got the highest marks in gender equality, or the other way around. Recently we saw a situation where a girl from Uttar Pradesh, she tortured her husband, a software engineer, to such an extent that he committed suicide. Right? So this kind of outcome should not be there. The objective is to prevent this kind of outcome, and the only way to do that is to make sure that things are sui generic. What is the meaning of sui generic? Sui generic means that which comes from within, that which is produced by itself, like air giving rise to air, or earth recycling water, something like that. Okay, so education system is not the solution to everything else when they are trying to develop, to force social agendas through education system, especially in higher education. These are the things that should be dealt with when people are in class 3, 4, 5. That is the formative stage. In higher education, you are supposed to devote your time to critical thinking, to development of technologies, to development of alternative debates, right? This is not the stage when bhasan baji should happen, that this you should do, this you should not do. Political anything that can be interpreted political way should not be forced down the throat of the people who are passing through uh, the education system, especially the higher education. There are some exceptions, of course, that I mean, you should always sensitize people about the need not to become a terrorist, so to say. Okay, or the need not to take too much of liberty on social media when saying things, because there are real life consequences. But I am a firm believer in giving minor nudges to people when they are in higher education. It is assumed that when you are in higher education, you are intelligent enough for you to be able to understand and work out things if someone points you in the right direction. That is my opinion. I mean, others may have a different opinion. Right?
I think,
Thank you, sir. Thank you so
yes,
much.
Dr. Annapurna completely satisfied with your words. Thank you, Dr. Annapurna, and thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, and Ashwani ma'am, you want to say something?
No, ma'am. The thoughts are clear now. So let's start with and thank you, sir, for your patience answering. You answer every question from our side. So thank you very much.
Yes, and I really want to say something about Dr. Sidharth Shankar. Sidharth sir, thank you so much for your inspiring and insightful session, sir. And on a personal note, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude. Actually, from the very first day when I met you, you have never denied even a single request of mine, no matter how small or beyond your level. As a respected Vice Chancellor, you are. You have always treated me as a such simplicity and kindness, sir. For me, you have been like a fire brigade. Always there been whenever I needed support, you just saying, "Don't worry, I'm there." So that's resilience means a lot to me, sir. So thank you so much again, sir, for your constant guidance. And it's truly have an honor to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
See, madam, I'll say just one thing.
Yes, sir.
Position is a temporary thing. Right. I am Vice Chancellor today. I may not remain Vice Chancellor. By temperament, I am not someone who gets enamored by administrative assignments. I don't get enamored by those things. By temperament, I am a researcher. I am an academician. So I am a Vice Chancellor today. It is very much possible that I may get bored with Vice Chancellorship in future and decide to go back to teaching. But my values as an individual, they should not change with the change in positions. Right? Whatever I am today, what I was in 2022 when you met me. Right? So, and I hope it should not change for anyone.
Yes, sir.
Right? Thank you so
Yes, sir.
much.
Thank you so much, sir. And dear participants, thank you for joining us and be there. We are starting our next session within 2 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
All the best, madam. All the best. I hope I can leave now.
Of course, sir. Thank you.
It is as good as 12 o'clock here, so I'll have to start.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.